I built that cabin with my own 2 hands. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't some luxury log retreat with a hot tub and satellite TV. Was a modest, sturdy, peaceful getaway I put together on a little plot of land I bought just outside of town. Off the grid, surrounded by pines and built from reclaimed timber and sweat. It was my sanctuary. But to the HOA that governed the community down the hill, it was apparently an eyesore. I didn't even know I was technically under their jurisdiction until the first letter showed up. They called it a courtesy notice. Said my cabin violated multiple appearance codes. No paved driveway, no lawn, exterior would not up to visual standards. I laughed at first. What lawn? It was a cabin in the woods, not some suburban cookie-cutter house, but the letters kept coming. Then came the fines. Then threats. I ignored them. My land wasn't even in their development. Or so I thought. Turns out, the HOA had recently expanded its boundaries through a shady annexation vote, swallowing up several unregulated parcels of land, including mine. I missed the notice. It was buried in legal jargon, and I don't check my mail all that often when I'm at the cabin. Rookie mistake, I guess. One morning, I was chopping firewood when I heard the rumble. At first, I figured it was a logging crew on the other side of the ridge. Then it got louder. By the time I turned the corner, 2 orange bulldozers and a flatbed with a backhoe were crawling up the gravel path I'd carved out with my old truck. A convoy of dusty white pickups followed close behind men in reflective vests, hardhats, clipboards. And at the front of it all, standing with arms crossed and sunglasses hiding her eyes, was Karen Billings, president of the Cedar Ridge Lakeside Homeowners Association. I stepped out into the road. Hands up. Whoa. Whoa, what the hell is going on? Karen didn't flinch. Mr. Bennett, you were notified that this unauthorized structure was scheduled for removal. You're trespassing on HOA land and occupying an unpermitted dwelling. Today's the day. I looked at the machines behind her, already growling to life, their blades lowered like jaws. My mouth went dry. You can't just destroy my home. Karen smiled without warmth. You should have responded to the notices. Before I could reply, 2 crew guys started toward the porch. I ran to block them. I didn't care if they were. Workers or not, this was my cabin. You step foot on that porch and I'll have you arrested for trespassing, I shouted. One of them hesitated. The other looked toward a man in a crisp button-down shirt, the project lead. Probably. He muttered something into a walkie-dot. Karen waved a dismissive hand. Proceed. My heart pounded. I didn't have a weapon on me, and I wasn't looking to start a fight. But I wasn't about to let them just level everything I'd built without trying something. Hold on, I yelled. What company is this? Who's running the demo? The guy with the clipboard looked at me, confused. Ridge Valley Earthworks, contracted by Cedar Ridge, HOA. Great, thanks. I turned back toward Karen. This isn't over. Karen smiled like she'd already won. Oh, but it is. You had your chance to comply. I stormed down the trail and drove straight back. Into town, heart racing. I wasn't even sure what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. If they were going to bring in bulldozers to destroy my life, I was going to find a way to bulldoze theirs figuratively, or maybe literally. I parked. Outside, a diner with decent Wi-Fi, pulled out my laptop and started digging. Ridge Valley Earthworks wasn't some national chain. It was local, family-owned, small but growing. And this is the kicker, they were in financial trouble. Their Yelp reviews were mixed. OSHA violations, overdue payments on heavy equipment. And on top of that, I found out through a business filing site that the owners had recently listed the company for potential acquisition. They were desperate for a buyout. I made a few calls. Talked to a buddy of mine who works in acquisitions and private investing. I had some savings from an old startup, and within a few hours, I had a plan by sundown. I was drafting an offer. A week later, after a rushed but very real business, Deli became the proud new owner of Ridge Valley Earthworks, and the first order of business: cancel all contracts related to Cedar Ridge HOA. The second, fire every single crew member who stepped foot near my property that day. I made sure to schedule their final check drop-off for the next morning at the HOA office, and just for good measure, I arranged for one of my newly appointed managers to deliver the news in person, along with a letter explaining why. But that part? That was just the warm dash-up. The real show was still to come, and Karen Billings had no idea what was heading her way. When I say I moved fast, I mean fast. By the time the HOA realized Ridge Valley Earthworks had backed out of the demolition contract, I had already rewritten the company's entire internal policy on residential jobs. No more HOA contracts, period. But firing the crew and canceling the job was just step one. I wanted Karen and her board to feel what it was like to lose control. The same helplessness I felt standing in front of my cabin watching machines rev up to destroy its high wanted that moment burned into their lives. The day after, I took full ownership. I scheduled a formal meeting with Ridge Valley's former owner, a guy named Dean Heller. He was a grizzled, sunburned man who'd clearly spent more time in machinery than behind a desk. We met at a dusty office on the edge of the industrial park. He was hesitant at first, suspicious even. "You really bought us just to cancel a contract?" he asked, one eyebrow raised. "Not just to cancel a contract," I said. "To send a message?" He laughed. "You must really hate this HOA." "I don't hate them," I replied. "Believe in consequences." Dean chuckled and shook his head, but he handed over the rest of the documents. With his cooperation, I got access to all company emails, contract logs, internal communications, everything. And guess what? There was more than just my property on their schedule. Cedar Ridge HOA had 5 active demolition jobs with Ridge Valley, some 4 sheds, some for RV carports, and even one scheduled for a backyard chicken coop that apparently violated the visual serenity clause. Monsters. Over the next few days, I made my moves carefully. I didn't want to tip my hand too early. I needed time to rebuild Ridge Valley's image, get a new team together, and most importantly, draft legal protections for homeowners like me. I hired a lawyer, a good one. Together, we wrote a assignedicus to the HOA, outlining that Ridge Valley Earthworks was withdrawing permanently from all contracts associated with Cedar Ridge due to ethical concerns. The best part? We served it during one of their board meetings. I showed up myself wearing a freshly pressed Ridge Valley button-down shirt and holding the folder. Karen's face when she saw me walk into that meeting room was priceless. "This is a private session," she said, cold as ice. "I'm here on business," I replied. "You're under contract with my company. Thought it would be polite to deliver this in person." I set the folder on the table, directly in front of her. The board members looked confused, some visibly nervous. One of them, an older man with a bald head and thick glasses, leaned forward. "Wait, your company?" Karen didn't say a word. She opened the folder, read the letter, and then slammed it shut. "You think you can strong-arm us?" she snapped. "We'll just hire someone else." I smiled. "Go ahead. But I've already notified all 3 other demolition companies in this county that we consider Cedar Ridge HOA a liability risk. I may or may not have shared some of your more aggressive tactics." Karen's lip twitched. "You're bluffing," she hissed. "Try me." I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them in stunned silence. That night, I drove back to the cabin, my cabin, still standing, still mine. I sat on the porch with a beer and listened to the wind move through the trees. But I wasn't done yet, not even close, because the HOA wasn't going to let this slide. and I needed to be ready for the counterpunch. The next day, sure enough, I got hit with a flurry of new letters. They weren't even subtle anymore. Unauthorized commercial activity on residential land. Operating a business within HOA. Bounds. Conflict of interest involving Ridge Valley Earthworks and Mr. Bennett's property. They were trying everything. I even got a letter saying I had erected illegal signage, referring to the small wooden Ridge Valley logo I'd posted on my driveway. But here's the twist. My lawyer had already gotten a copy of their boundary map from the county clerk's office, and as it turns out, they hadn't annexed my land after all. That original notice. Fake, entirely fabricated by Karen and a few bored cronies. Their expansion vote never passed the required majority. It had been shot down 2 months before they ever tried to fine me, meaning they had no legal authority over my property. None. They lied, and now they were not only facing a civil dispute. Other lawyer wasted no time filing a formal complaint with the state HOA Oversight Board. We submitted all the forged notices, fake maps, the demolition order, and even emails we found between Karen and Ridge Valley's former project manager that referenced the problematic hill cabin. It was clear as day they had targeted me because I didn't fit their suburban fantasy mold. No lawn, no siding, no compliance, just a cabin in the woods and a guy who refused to be pushed around. I spent the next week helping Ridge Valley pivot toward land conservation work. Forest trail maintenance, cabin restoration, off-grid builds, things that actually help the community. We even started a new program that offered free assessments for rural property owners being harassed by HOAs. And the best part? I named it Project Eyesore. Karen hated it. I know this because she emailed me personally, threatening to sue over defamation. I replied with a single sentence. See you in court, Karen. There are few moments in life that feel like slow-motion triumphs. You plan, you grind, you lose sleep. And then everything finally aligns, and you just watch it unfold. That day came for me on a crisp Friday morning, 2 weeks after I'd shut down every single demolition project tied to the Cedar Ridge HOA. By now, the neighborhood was buzzing with rumors. A few residents had reached out to me anonymously, thanking me for stopping the HOA from bulldozing their sheds or playhouses. One guy even offered to help mow the area around my cabin out of sheer appreciation. But Karen was livid. She and the board had doubled down on their smear. Campaigns circulating newsletters and emails painting me as a rogue property developer with hostile business practices. One even called me a dangerous influence with access to heavy machinery. Cute, so I decided it was time to show them just how much access I had. Through Ridge Valley Earthworks, I scheduled a compliant site visit at a property within Cedar Ridge. This wasn't unusual. We used to do small grading projects for gardens, retaining walls, even HOA landscaping. I used that as my in. I made sure the whole board got the invite. Told them we were doing a final walkthrough for a canceled job and wanted them present to formally close out the contract. They showed up in full force. Karen in her oversized sunglasses, clipboard in hand, like she was running a military operation. 2 board members trailed her, plus a few curious residents who hovered nearby. I arrived 10 minutes late, pulling up in a freshly washed Ridge Valley truck with a new banner across the side. Under new ownership the second I stepped out. Karen's arms were already crossed. Is this really necessary? She snapped. You've made your point. Oh, this isn't about a point, I said with a grin. It's about standards, visual harmony, compliance. You nor language. She scowled. I waved to my new crew, hand-picked contractors, who had nothing to do with the previous botched demolition, and asked them to gather around the front yard where the HOA was holding court. Then I called out 5 names. Each one belonged to a crew member who'd shown up with bulldozers to destroy my cabin. They hesitantly stepped forward, visibly uncomfortable. They probably thought they were just helping shut down another HOA job. But now, they were standing in front of the people who ordered them to trespass the man who now owned the company that signed their paychecks. I took a deep breath and said what I'd been rehearsing for days. Gentlemen, you're here today because you were involved in an attempted demolition of a private residence without proper documentation, permits, or property consent. That wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. Karen raised her hand, already huffing. Excuse me, we authorized that removal. And you, I said, turning to her, had no legal authority to issue that order. The property was never within HOA jurisdiction. Your annexation vote failed. You knew that, and you did it anyway. The crowd murmured. One of the other board members leaned toward Karen. She ignored him. I turned back to the crew, effective immediately. Your contracts with Ridge Valley Earthworks are terminated. Your severance packages will be processed by end of week. Consider this your formal release. They all just stood there. One muttered something about just following orders. But I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled a crisp folder from my bag and handed it to Karen. This is a notice of formal complaint, filed with the state HOA regulatory board. It includes evidence of forged annexation notices, unlawful demolition attempts, harassment, and targeted enforcement. You'll be contacted by a state investigator within the week. Karen's face went pale. You can't do this. I already. Did she try to maintain her composure? But I could see the panic bubbling under her skin. She'd ruled this neighborhood like a queen for years. Unchallenged, unchecked, untouchable. Not anymore, as I turned to leave. One of the residents, a woman in her 60s, stepped forward and said, "Thank you." My garden shed was next on their list. I nodded. Not anymore. By the following Monday, things unraveled fast for the HOA. The state's oversight board announced a formal investigation into the Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association. Karen was forced to step down as president pending review. Her smug little newsletters stopped arriving. The fake annexation vote was voided entirely. And within 2 months, the HOA was hit with a civil suit from 5 homeowners, including me. As for Ridge Valley Earthworks, we rebranded. New logo, new mission, and a clear policy. No HOA contracts without written consent from every affected homeowner. We even added an outreach program, or a Pew Mono consultations for rural property owners being harassed by HOAs trying to strong-arm them. It's funny. All I wanted was a little peace in my cabin. I didn't plan on starting a movement, but that's what it became. Karen tried to bulldoze my home, so I bulldozed her power, and if I had to do it all again, I wouldn't change a damn thing.